Now, you know, the politicians are back in Canberra. They were there yesterday to move condolence motions and a minute's silence for the victims of the Bondi terror attack. Today, though, the attention has firmly turned to legislation. In other words, what to do legally about that and to try to make sure it never happens again. In fact, as I reported yesterday, Susan Lee and Anthony Albanese held a meeting yesterday morning to discuss the Prime Minister's suite of proposed changes. Now, a range of discussions and concessions seem to have been made since then, because we're hearing that the Coalition will support the government's hate groups bill. They weren't able to support the gun law reforms, but the Greens will. So both of those will go through, but because of different arrangements in the upper house. As for hate speech, if we can sort of simplify it into those three categories, well, I'm not sure much is going to happen on that at all. There just doesn't seem to be the ability to find common ground. As you know, Andrew Wallace is the Shadow Attorney-General. He's obviously been very busy the last couple of days working out the opposition's position and where they can agree and where they must disagree. He's with me on the line from the Canberra studio. Andrew, thank you for being there. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Michael. And just letting you know, we may have some divisions coming up shortly, so I may have to fly quickly.
If we hear those bells, off you go. The hate groups legislation, groups like neo-Nazis, Hizb ut-Tahrir, those names have been bounced around, although we'll wait to see which groups are to be prescribed, if any. That looks like you and the government have reached some consensus on that. Is that right?
Yeah, look, it's still not a done deal. We're still waiting for the National Party to land on a position on that. But, you know, look, this is a demonstrative of the shambolic nature in which the government has put all of this together. Now, we called for the government to recall Parliament before Christmas. Susan Lee called to the Prime Minister to take this opportunity to be bipartisan, include us as an opportunity to draft some decent legislation. And what we've seen is anything but. The Prime Minister said, no, thanks, we've got this. He came up with what Dennis Shanahan called an omni-shambles bill that did nothing but unite everybody else but the Labor Party as to how bad this bill was. He talked about how the bill was unsplittable, and then over the weekend he split it. And basically said, well, you tell us, Coalition, what you're prepared to agree to, and then, you know, we'll run with that. This has been absolutely shambolic, and it demonstrates just how badly the Labor Party have dealt with this, not just since Bondi, but since the 7th of October 2023.
Well, that's all right. But so you're not just the Liberal Shadow Attorney-General, you're the Coalition Attorney-General. So it looks like the Liberals have found enough common ground with the government on hate group legislation, but the Nationals, you just said, are yet to get there. Why are they holding out? What's their position as we speak?
Well, we don't actually know what their position is right now. They're still in discussions. They've got to go through their processes. The Liberal Party has been through its. We had our Liberal Party party room meeting last night, and we landed on our position, and that was to support the bill after we made some significant amendments which were accepted by the government.
But surely the Nationals would be speaking. I mean, you as I said, you're not just the Liberal Shadow Attorney-General, you're the Coalition's spokesman. I mean, surely David Littleproud, they must be talking with you about where they're at and what their thinking is and how close they are to getting on board?
Yeah, well, there's more work to be done, and Susan Lee, the leader, is talking with David Littleproud. But, you know, the clock is ticking, as they say.
All right, so let's say the Nationals don't get on board. Does that mean that the hate group legislation is sunk in the Senate because you need their 4 votes, or would the government, with Liberals alone, have enough to get it through?
Well, it's likely that it would get through in the Senate. Okay. Without the National Party.
All right, okay, so they might not be relevant there. So it looks like the Greens will support gun law reform. You guys won't, as far as the reform is as we speak.
That's correct.
The hate group reform should go through, even without the Nationals on the numbers. The third part, and I'm simplifying this as best as I can, hate speech legislation. This was always the most contentious.
Yeah.
It seems as though there just isn't common ground. Is there any common ground there, or is it just... we've got to completely clean that slate and start again?
Well, the government has already withdrawn the racial vilification provisions.
Sure, but if they were to try to bring something back...
Well, the Prime Minister has said he's not going to do that in this term. So I think the racial vilification provisions are dead dead, buried and cremated for, certainly in this parliament.
Okay. Do we need any action in that respect, or are the current laws enough?
Well, this is the problem. So the provisions that were hastily drafted by the government left open these defences, which effectively would have given a how-to manual for religious hate preachers to not break the law.
Yeah.
And we saw that those provisions were a step too far. We saw them as an impingement on free speech. That was a hill that we were prepared to die on. We were not prepared to accept that. And consequently, the government capitulated. The Prime Minister capitulated on this.
Okay, so the Jewish community, look, it's not an homogenous group. There are different points of views, but the majority opinion from what I can hear out of the community is that we do need action taken on hate speech. They were concerned, even those saying, look, we've got to do something, were concerned that, as you say, that clause about, the quote's in the holy book and therefore I'm immune from prosecution was nonsensical. But some were saying, look, let's get something in legislation and then we can work out the finer points and get toward the perfect from the good with time. I mean, I don't share that point of view, because I think once something's in legislation, it's not easy to then start to retrofit and rectify. Other things come up and the goodwill can evaporate quickly and you're often stuck with a subpar piece of legislation. But do you think we need any additional legislation in this space?
Well, we're always very cautious and conservative about these sorts of issues. But I think it's important to point out to your listeners that the prohibited hate groups legislation, which is likely to pass the House of Representatives today, that deals with specifically dealing with organisations like Hizb ut-Tahrir and neo-Nazis, organisations that have not to date met the legal threshold of being listed as a terrorist organisation. They've been able to fly under that legal line, and the advice that the successive governments have received is that from our intelligence agencies and departments is that they have not met that threshold. So we've got a situation where people are involved in these sorts of organisations that are spewing out hate and indoctrinating people to effectively cause us harm. And we can't, in all good conscience, continue to allow that to happen. And we've seen, an announcement from the National Socialist Network that they are prepared to shut down as an organisation as a result of these laws. So, that is a good thing. Anything we can do to try and improve social cohesion in a country where this is not the country I grew up in, Michael, and it's not the country you grew up in. We are fraying at the edges from a social cohesion perspective. Josh Frydenberg put this very, very eloquently at Bondi, shortly after the December 14 attack, when he said, first they come for the Saturday people, then they come for the Sunday people. We can't just assume that these things are going to be purely limited to Jewish communities. There are people who want to do Australians harm, and we have to do what we can to dissemble those organisations by creating laws to make it an offence to be a part of it, to be an offence to provide funding for them. We don't want those organisations in the same way that we don't want terrorist organisations.
No, could they metastasise, though, in the same way that illicit drugs do? I mean, so for example, you can outlaw cocaine, but then people that want a hit will go and find something else, and the dealers will create a new drug, and then you've got to go and prescribe that, and then so on and so forth. I mean, the Nazis or the National Socialists could disband under that banner today, but they could come up as something else tomorrow with a slightly different name. You then have to knock that out and constantly prescribe. It's sort of a game of whack-a-mole a bit, isn't it? Yeah. Look,
you're right, and that is something that could happen. But the ability for us to be able to, if these laws pass, to be able to respond appropriately is there.
Yeah.
You don't just not enforce laws because people don't necessarily follow them. We have road rules. We know that people break those road rules, but we don't just turn around and say, well, we're not going to have them anymore because we know people speed.
Yeah, well, that's the analogy I used earlier. I agree with it. You've got to try. I mean, it's the role of politicians more than anything else is to keep the public safe, and you've got to try. Just finally, all the legislation, and look, I appreciate politicians only have certain levers at their disposal. You are the legislative makers in this country. So that's the main lever. But all the legislation in the world can't do anything about what people think between their ears, can it? And I think the public also have to appreciate that a lot of what we're dealing with here is some pretty twisted ideology, some of it informed by holy books, others informed just out of ignorance and stupidity and racism and hatred and intergenerational stuff and overseas baggage and the whole thing. There is a limit, is there not, to what the Parliament can do to stamp on anti-Semitism.
You're absolutely right, Michael, and this is where things like political leadership come into the fray, because we have seen a total abrogation of political leadership when it comes to anti-Semitism. We've seen a federal government, we've seen a Prime Minister that is quite happy to support UN resolutions that demonise Israel. We've had government officials, Penny Wong refused to go to the sites of the atrocities on her first visit after October 7. This government has been no friend of Israel, and quite frankly, the Jewish community in this country, they know that. So where the government has given succour to those people who want to see Israel, those horrible phrases that we're seeing on the streets, it's incumbent upon political leadership to speak up when they hear and see things that are inappropriate, and that hasn't happened for more than 2 years, and it's taken Bondi to wake Australian political leadership up, and it's an absolute disgrace.
Yeah, well, I agree. The only issue here, or not the only issue, one of the issues here, though, is we are, as we have these conversations, trying to redefine in the contemporaneous sense what free speech means in Australia, are we not? I mean, your shadow Attorney-General, free speech goes beyond just the immediate issues we're discussing here, but on the one hand, you've got the Greens saying, oh, well, certain chants should be allowed effectively at rallies, and yet on the other hand, they don't like other phrases being used against groups that tend to support them or that they have a particular affiliation with, and I don't signal them out. Every group, every political persuasion is like this. They had their whole Adelaide Writers' Festival fracas, furor recently. A lot of people going out in solidarity with the doctor, probably because they would agree with her on some issues, and yet you've had other people cancelled over the years, and no one bats an eyelid. We don't really have, do we, in this country, a solid legal understanding of the parameters of free speech? Isn't it time we try to get that, whether that's an American-style bill that we put in, a fundamental right to free speech or something? But, I mean, it still seems very elastic in this country.
Well, I don't think it's as elastic as you'd suggest. Many of the laws are there in place already. It's just a question of whether, as we have seen over the last 2.5 years, this is often not a question of requiring new laws. It's a matter of enforcing the current laws that we have. We saw in New South Wales a demonstration just over the weekend where pro-Palestinian supporters were effectively thumbing their nose at the orders of the New South Wales Police Commissioner post-Bondi that they not congregate and not demonstrate, and yet there they were in front of the New South Wales Police, and I'm not aware of any arrests being made. Well, I'm sorry, if that's the approach you're going to take, then if someone believes that they can act contrary to the law without consequence, don't complain when they start upping the ante.
Good to speak. We'll have regular conversations, I hope. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Michael.
Andrew Wallace there, Shadow Attorney-General.
Authorised by Andrew Wallace, LNP, Boccarina, Queensland.